my name's Richard. I work out here at Gotta Ride Bikes in San Antonio, Texas, and today we're working on rear derailleurs. Got this lovely Cervelo in my stand, S5. This one's in for a tune-up and we haven't gotten started on it yet, so I figure we'll go ahead and just do the most common adjustment on this one, and we'll work on the rear derailleur. Front derailleur is almost a different animal. If it really comes down to adjusting the front derailleur and you haven't done it before, I would probably go to a bike shop and see the whole process in person. So I think the first thing you should do, of course, is spin the wheel and make sure that the rim is nice and straight. You can compare it to a brake pad, or you can sit there and hold your finger against it and just make sure that you don't see a whole bunch of play. Otherwise, that'll mess with some of your adjustments later on down the line. So we'll get some of the preliminaries out of the way. The wheel should be nice and true. The chain shouldn't be blown out. It's really hard to get a blown out chain to actually shift. So we use our chain wear indicator, and this guy goes on and should basically never fit down in the chain. So this one's in real good shape and I'm not worried about it at all. If it was blown out, then they wear this way as well as wearing this way. They'll gain in length and they'll become flexier from side to side. So if it gets too flexy, then this little wheel back here doing its job, pushing on this part of the chain, and the chain will not be as stiff and it's more free to do whatever it wants. So our chain's straight, our wheel's straight, our chain's good, and we're going to go ahead and start actually worrying about the derailleur itself. So I like to go all the way down into the hardest gear because it buys me the most room to keep my fingers nice and clear. And then we'll pull the derailleur off of its little mount. Little derailleur hanger right here. I like to pick this guy up to take the tension off the V-screw, and this whole thing falls out the bottom. We have a derailleur adjusting gauge, which makes sure that the hanger is nice and level with the whole rest of the wheel. So the mounting bolt, the tension wheel, and the jockey wheel are all in the same plane as the rest of the cassette, or when this guy starts to walk, because he only walks in a straight line, it won't get along with the curve tangent to the rest of the cassette, and if it walks stupid on that line, then it's not going to feed right and it's not going to shift right. So we should talk about this tool. This is totally a shop quality tool. He's kind of expensive. I wouldn't recommend most people to really have one of these unless you do a lot of work on your own bikes. The other thing is it's also a big pry bar. We're sitting there prying directly on this piece of aluminum, straight aluminum. It's really, really soft. If you've never done it before, you can totally tear this thing in half, and it's not really gonna be too terribly difficult. So be really careful with it, and maybe if it gets to this point, then you should take it to a bike shop. Proceeding, this guy threads in, and then we can use this little gauge up against the rim to check how flat it is. So this one's pretty good. He's got a little bit of play up at the top, so we bend it just a little bit, hopefully half the amount that we actually needed there. And then we check this back point right back here. And then I like to check it at its 45s as well. So when the hanger's nice and straight, we can go ahead and pull the tool off, and then we put the derailleur back. Chain on top of the jockey wheel, pull this guy, and the whole thing bolts right back together. And then we're ready to go ahead and start dealing with the derailleur. There's two adjustment screws on the derailleur that are really critical. These are the most common ones. The screws tell you how far the derailleur can walk towards the wheel and how far it can walk towards the frame. If we sit there and start making adjustments to these, like the high screw here, which we hardly ever have to mess with, we can sit here and really dial this guy in, and then the next time it comes around, we haven't done anything else, but it's gained 2 gears because this stop screw is telling it to stop here, which isn't necessarily what we want. If we have any stop screws that are kind of out of adjustment, then we sit there and slowly let them walk into position. They'll normally talk a little bit before they start getting down, like right about here. You can hear it starting to get agitated, then it gets louder, and then it jumps, and we give it just a little bit more slack than that. You can check it by just moving the derailleur by hand, and he should fall down into that gear without any real difficulty. It's the same thing up here in the top gear, but you have to be more careful because you don't want the chain to go over the top of the cassette and into the wheel while the wheel is moving, especially while the customer's watching. So we put this up pretty much by hand, and I can be kind of happy with this. Again, if it was too far in, we would back this limit screw out. If it was too far out and it was throwing itself over the top into the wheel, then we would tighten this guy in, and it would bring the derailleur further away from the bike. Once you're pretty comfortable that your chain's not going to go over the top in either position, really the only thing you have to work with is tension. Everything in the middle is controlled by tension. If it's straight and your endpoints are set up, then you just have to worry about how tight your cable is. If you sit there and you have it really tight, it's going to do crazy things. It's going to want to go too far up the cassette. We didn't shift, it just did that. You shift it again, and it goes 2 gears, and it doesn't like to fall. Shift down, shift down. It's already down, but it won't fall into that bottom gear. So we sit there and we back off tension till it talks, till it moves, and maybe then some. You want enough tension until the derailleur snaps up onto that cog without really having to fight it too terribly much. When they chatter like that, I tend to go ahead and adjust them in the direction that we want it to go. So if it's having problems going towards the wheel, you use more tension. If it's having problems falling towards, then you can take tension away. If you don't have a lot of tension and it's still having problems, you may have to oil your cable and casing, which we're not going to do on video on this bike. So when that's climbing about how you want to make sure it goes the other direction too. Doesn't like that one, doesn't like that one. So we'll take a little bit of tension away. Some cogs that get ridden more than others develop more notable wear patterns than the rest of them. So sometimes in your commons down here, if you have a rider that has a couple gears that he's selected, then everything can still be in good position. But even if the derailleur's adjusted right, it might walk across the cassette going bam, 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 tick, 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 bam, 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 depending on the wear of the cassette. This one's not too old, but this guy seems to have 1 or 2 spots that it likes to favor a little bit more, especially right around there. So we'll lose just a little bit more tension. And then when it behaves fairly well for us, we'll go ahead and start working with the front derailleur. We'll oil the chain, and yeah, that really should be about it. If it's anything more complicated than that, you should curse at it and take it to a local bicycle mechanic. I'm Richard at Gotta Ride Bikes. If we can do anything else for you, definitely let us know.